Hi everyone, it's Jessica. I'm really excited to be the one kicking off the February Makers with Heart video collaboration. And this month we are all focusing on specialty papers from close to my heart, as well as some of the fun features of the cardstock. Now these are the 3 cards that I'm going to be making in the video today. And the specialty paper that I chose to work with is the Distress Watercolor Cardstock. You do get 10 sheets in a pack, and it is really nice and thick. One side has a textured feel to it and the other is really smooth, and I have to say I was very pleased as I was working with it. So like I said, these are the 3 cards we're going to be making, and I was drawn to choose this particular specialty paper for my video because I love to play with my Distress Oxide inks, and sometimes, I don't know about you guys, but I like to kind of play with them and make a mess and make cool backgrounds and things, but then it's like, well, what do you do with it after you've done, kind of making that mess and making a cool background? What do you do with it? So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Now, to get started, it is important to have an all-purpose mat because we will be getting messy. And for the first card, I am working on the smooth side of the paper. Now, I pulled a couple of different Distress Oxides. I've got tumbled glass is one of them, and I'm just going to smush it down into my all-purpose mat and add a little spritz of water. And for this particular card, this is one of my favorite techniques for making a fun background. Once I get that Distress Oxide wet, I put my hand in like a baggie or grab some plastic packaging of some sort, and then I just use it to pick that color up and smush it around my paper. Now, if you touch it up and down, you'll get a different look. You can also slide your hand back and forth and almost paint with your hand in the baggie, and that's a lot of fun too. And so like I said, I'm just going to go to town making a mess and kind of playing with this. Now, after doing this particular one, I decided that it wasn't dark enough, so I grabbed another one of my Distress Oxide inks, and I'm just going to add another layer of color. Off camera in between those 2, I did heat set, and you can see here I'm heat setting it again for the second time. And that's one of the fun things about this Distress Oxide paper is you can just keep layering the colors on there. Now, I was showing you that even after 2 applications of water and color, that this paper is not buckling. I have to tell you, I was super impressed with how it maintained its shape and it stayed really flat. So if that's something you're looking for in a specialty paper, then this is probably the one to go for. Now, I am creating a sky here for my little farm animal card, and I grabbed some chipped sapphire and I went around the edges, but then it just made it a little too dark. I don't want this to be a stormy sky for my animals, so I layered a little bit more of the lighter blue over the top until I got a look that I liked. All right, so I'm going to play with my texture paste. This is the opaque matte, and these are some clouds from the Build a Rainbow thin cut, and I just cut them out and made myself a little stencil. And this is just regular white daisy cardstock that I made this stencil with, and when I'm done, I'll throw it away. And so I'm going to grab just a little scoop of this texture paste. Make sure you put your lid back on right away because this does dry very quickly. And then I'm going to smear over top of my stencil, and I'm not making it smooth. You'll notice I'm kind of adding a little bit more on top of it because I want my clouds to have a lot of dimension. I'm going to repeat the process for the second cloud, and then doesn't that look so fun? I just love how this makes a sky scene. All right, now it's time to turn our attention to the grass. So I've grabbed another piece of that Distress Watercolor Cardstock, which I've just cut into a smaller section. And now I'm using Mowed Lawn, and for this one, I'm just making enough that I can cut 2 different pieces out for my grass layer. So I just kind of, sponging it on, not very carefully. And for this part, I want to play with the water features of Distress Oxide. So again, I'm going to smush it into my all-purpose mat, and then I'm going to take my water brush and pick some of that up, and I'm going to flick it. So I'm going to add some splatters of the same color over top, and that looks really fun. And then I'm going to do the same thing with my green apple shimmer brush. And so both of those are wet and they'd react with the Distress Oxide a little bit. And then I also splattered some water on there. So just to add a whole lot of fun dimension and texture to our grass. Now I used my Fancy Borders thin cuts to cut those two pieces out once that had dried. And then I'm going to layer them onto my card. And I think I forgot to mention that for all of these pieces of Distress Watercolor Cardstock that I'm using, I just took that 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and I cut it into quarters. And then this one that I'm creating for my card, I cut down an extra 1/4 inch on each side so that I can mat it onto my card front. So I'm just working with pieces of this package. And so I think it's really gonna, even though there are 10 sheets in a package, I think it will really last for quite a while because I imagine you'll probably be making cards with it. And so you can get 4 cards out of 1 sheet. So there, now I've trimmed that up and I just love the way that looks. The clouds are mostly dry, but I still need to be a little bit careful of them. Now off camera, I went ahead and for this one, instead of doing the cow, I think I'm gonna turn to a horse. These animals are from the stamp set called From the Funny Farm. And I've colored them in with my tri-blend markers, and then I put some thin 3D foam tape on the back of them. And then this is just some black and white twine. Honestly, it's from Target and I bought it for wrapping Christmas presents. And so I've just been using it in my craft room since then. And I wrapped that around the bottom twice just so I can kind of get a feel for where I'm going to put my horse. And then I am going to grab the little sentiment off the stamp set that says, "Hey there." And I'm going to stamp that down in the bottom. Now in my cow card, I put my sentiment over on the right side, but for this one, I think I'm going to stamp it over to the left, and I'm just going to flip flop. Since the horse is looking in the one direction, I kind of just switched the sides of things on each of my cards. And so, but same idea, just giving it a little tie, stamped my "Hey there" down at the bottom, pulled off the foam tape backing, and then there we go, that's done. And I thought this was just so much fun. Like I said, just kind of playing with my Distress Oxide inks and creating fun backgrounds. But then, you know, after you do that, what do you make with it? And so it's a lot of fun to kind of make sky and grass scenes with it. And this paper is just perfect for that. Don't you love the clouds? I think they might be my favorite part. And out of all 3 cards that I make in this video, I think that the animal cards are my favorite ones. You'll have to let me know if you like the horse or the cow better. All right, let's move on to the second project. And this is one that I do something like this quite a bit. Same thing when I'm playing with my Distress Oxides and I just kind of want to have fun making a mess and mixing colors and blending things and just kind of playing around. I do that and then I'm left with this pretty piece of paper that I've created and it's like, all right, well now what? And so this card just kind of demonstrates one of the things that I like to do, which is after I've made that pretty background, I grab some of my thin cuts and I just cut some different shapes out of my paper. And so here you can see I'm just kind of finishing some of those fun Distress Oxide techniques, you know, spraying some water on it, which pulls the color up, and so it gives it this fun white speckled look over top of your color that you just, you know, blended on. And then I am grabbing my Dina Wakley Gilt Gloss Spray, and I thought, well, these are orange and yellow, and let's just kind of add with that same tone. I splattered some of that Gilt Gloss Spray over the top as well. And like I said, it's such a pretty piece of paper, but now what to do with it, you know? So I'm going to make a little flower out of it, and I've decided to use my waterfall thin cut from Close to My Heart. Honestly, I usually use the little shapes that come with this thin cut set more than I make waterfall cards with it. I don't know why, but there's a really fun little scallop circle on there, and so and also a little square with some stitch marks on it, and so I just cut up that piece of paper that I made. And I'm only going to use the one scallop circle right now for this card, but I will definitely use those other pieces on some different projects. Now, these are some other pieces that I have prepared. I've got a piece of white daisy cardstock that I cut out with my stitched rectangle thin cut. And then I used some fern cardstock from Close to My Heart and the layered flowers thin cut to just cut a bunch of the leaves out, and then I'm going to glue a bunch of them together and stack them. I did take, there's like a little branch piece in that layered flowers thin cuts, and I cut a couple of those out too, and it's just a little bit longer than those leaves, and I put one of those over the top just to make my stem on my flower a little bit longer. And so, like I said, I'm just kind of gluing a bunch of those together to give it a little bit of extra height. So it's not just one layer of green cardstock. And then I will put this here in the middle of my piece of white daisy. And then I'm going to put that little scallop circle that I put over the top, and that's going to become my flower. Now, I could have just cut out a flower from that same layered flowers thin cuts, but like I said, I like to use the little shapes on my waterfall card set. They're just kind of fun to play with, and then I'm going to grab one of my wood buttons and put it in the center of this flower here just to finish it off. And then I will off camera stitch some orange embroidery thread through that button. And then this orange piece of cardstock I also cut that out using that waterfall thin cut, and then with some white embossing powder, I stamped a sentiment. I grabbed it from one of the old Stamp of the Months, I believe. I just went through my stash until I found a sentiment that fit on that little piece. And then I will grab a piece of nectarine cardstock and just kind of put a couple little finishing touches on it. And I touched it before my ink dried, and I did get a little smudge on there, but otherwise I really love the way that card turned out. And so you can see just from playing with your, Distress Oxide inks and, messing around with that Distress Watercolor Cardstock, you can make some really cool backgrounds and things that you can cut some shapes out of. All right, so now I've been using my Distress Oxide inks. I wanted to show you that this is watercolor paper, and so of course you can use your watercolor paints with it as well. And the first two cards, I used the smooth side of the paper. And so for this one, I'm gonna flip it over and work on the textured side of the paper. And I'm using my water brush, and I'm just picking up one of the blue colors, and I'm starting in the middle and then working my way up. And so that way, the top side of my swash of color is going to be lighter, and then it will be darker as I get closer to the bottom. And then I'll clean off my brush, and then I'm going to come into the purple, and I'm going to grab just a little bit of purple here, and I'm going to add a little purple swash to the bottom. And I love the way that those two colors blend together. And that's it. Guys, that's it. I mean, I'm just adding some color to this watercolor cardstock, and it moves so nicely on this paper, and it was really easy to do. And I'll just dab up a little bit of that excess water, and then I will hit this with my heating gun just to make sure that it is really and truly dry before I stamp anything on top of it. But I love the way that looks as it dries. It's so pretty. Can you see? Oh my goodness, aren't those colors blended together so nicely? And so you could do that with any colors that are your favorite colors, right? All right, now this is the Operation Smile stamp that is available right now. And I grabbed the one, it's the Marilyn Monroe saying on it, and it says something to the effect of, smile because life is a beautiful thing worth smiling about. I'm not quoting her exactly, but it's a really nice sentiment on this stamp set. And so I'm grabbing my archival ink, and I'm going to stamp that right over the center of that swash of color. And this card is almost done. I cut parts of this out and sped it up for the sake of the video, but from start to finish, the making of this particular card was just under 5 minutes. So, you could really knock a bunch of these out so quickly, and I just love the simplicity of them, both the look and then the ease of making them too, and they're really pretty. Those are a couple of bitty sparkles that I just scattered around my sentiment, and then I will mat this on some black cardstock, and then I'll just have to put that onto my card base, and it's done. So that's it. I hope you guys had fun. Like I said, for me, when I looked at my Distress Watercolor Cardstock, I thought, I'm not an artist by any means. You certainly could stamp an image on it and then paint in with your watercolors. It absolutely would work for that, but you know, I'm not that talented. And so for me, I just kind of like to play with my colors and then make some things out of them. All right, guys, there are some more specialty papers coming up from the other ladies in the Makers with Heart group. Tomorrow is Kim, and everybody will be one day this week. And so I will update all of those links down below. If you see anything you like, be sure to check out the description. I will post some links to all the products that I used. And as always, I would appreciate a like and a comment. Happy crafting. Bye.